Morning, class, and welcome to another class with respect to information technology auditing. Today, we are going to move further into information technology as we did the last time. I've already shared my screen with you. Today, we are going to talk about we are going to talk about internal controls. And when we talk about internal control, we mean different things. Internal control normally means different things to different people. And it normally causes confusion among the business people, the legislatures, the regulators, and also others. So in Ghana here, the businessmen, the legislature, that is our parliamentarians, and also the regulators. In this case, the regulators can be Bank of Ghana and other financial security commissions. Internal control, there is always confusion about sometimes the borders, who to do this, who to implement it. So internal control is broadly defined as a process effected by an entity's board of directors, management, and other personnel, designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives in the following categories. So we are simply saying that internal control is a process, one, which is normally effected by an entity, that is an organization's board of directors, that is the top management, and other personnel. And the internal control is normally designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of the objectives in the following category. That's first one, effectiveness and efficiency of operation, reliability of financial reporting, and also complying with applicable laws and regulations. So when you have an effective or when you have an internal control, it will guide the workers, it will guide the operation of the organization. That is ensuring effectiveness and also efficiency, that is performance in their operations. And also reliability of financial reporting, because internal control will help you, will guide whoever is in charge, the spending officer, the accountant, and everybody to take care of or to manage the finances of an organization. And also compliance with applicable laws and regulations. For example, the Bank of Ghana normally have rules and regulations that guides the operation of or the management of financial institutions in the country. So internal control will help individuals or organizations to be compliant with respect to applicable laws and regulations. Let's talk about what internal control can do. What internal control can do. Internal control can help an entity achieve its performance and profitability. It can help an organization to achieve its performance and profitability target in order to prevent loss of resources. It can help ensure reliable financial reporting. And it can also help that the enterprise complies with laws and regulations, avoiding damage to its reputation, also other consequences. So, for example, the internal control, if an organization is always using its internal control religiously, it will always prevent them. We are in this country when we heard that some financial institutions were shut down or were closed because they were not following or they were not complying with the applicable laws and regulations stipulated by the Bank of Ghana. So if you are an organization and you always follow your internal control religiously, it will help you to prevent you from damages with respect to your reputation. And in summary, one can say that it can help an entity get to where it wants to go. That is, achieve its mission, vision, and also objectives, and avoid pitfalls and surprises along the way. Let's also talk about what internal control cannot do. Unfortunately, some people have greater and unrealistic expectations. They look for absolutes, believing that internal control can ensure an entity's success. Thus, it will ensure achievement of basic business objectives or mission or vision. At the least, ensure survival. Even if effective internal control can only help an entity achieve these objectives. It can provide management information about the entity's progress or lack of it towards their achievement. But one important thing that we must all bear in mind is that internal control can never, ever change an inherently poor manager into a good one. And a shift in government policy or programs, competitors' action or economic condition can be beyond management's control. Internal control cannot ensure success or even survival. For example, whenever there are government policies, there are a lot of competitors and also economic conditions like the impact of COVID-19, no matter how good, how effective your internal control is, there is no way you will not feel the impact, even though in some cases you can minimize the impact. Internal control can ensure the reliability of financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations, which I've already talked about. An internal control system, no matter how well conceived and operated, can provide only reasonable, not absolute assurance to management and the board regarding achievement of its objective. And the likelihood of an achievement is affected by limitations inherent in all internal control systems. So these include the realities that judgment in decision-making can be faulty and that breakdowns can occur because of simple error or mistake. Additionally, controls can be circumvented by the coalition of two or more people, and management has the ability to override the system. Another limiting factor is that the design of an internal control system must reflect the fact that there are resources constraints and the benefit of controls must be considered relative to their cost. So now let's look at some of the basic definition or the definition of internal controls reflect on these three fundamental concepts. You cannot talk about internal control without talking about these three fundamental concepts. That is, 1, internal control is a process. 2, people are what make internal control work. And 3, no matter how well designed and operated, internal control can provide only reasonable, that is not absolute assurance, that all agency objectives will be met. So we are saying that the definition of internal control normally reflects on these three fundamental concepts. That is, 1, internal control is a process. That is, it is not an event, but a series of ongoing actions and activities that occur throughout each agency's operation and should be an integral part of the organizations rather than an add-on system within an organization. And we are also saying that, or I'm also saying that people are what make internal control work. While the responsibility for good internal control ultimately rests with management, all agency personnel play an important role. So the employees or the workers or the staff must also ensure that whatever internal controls that they have in place, they help or they put it into work. And no matter how well designed and also operated, an internal control can provide only a reasonable, not absolute. So you shouldn't think that internal control, once you have internal control, everything is going to work up to perfection. Now, who is responsible for internal control? Within any organization, who are also responsible for internal control? The first one is the head. That is the head. In this case, if, for example, if it's an organization, the CEO or the director, he is the first person responsible for internal control. The second one is the internal control officer. When you have a portfolio in an organization, or when the organization has a portfolio internal control officer, he's also one of those people responsible for internal control. The next one is the entire management. That is the management, the leadership of the company or the organization. The next one is also the staff or the employees. They are also responsible for internal control. Then the auditor or other professionals connected with auditing, they're also responsible for internal control. And one can also say that depending on an agency's governance structure, an audit committee can also be set up. And when you have an audit committee, they also be part of those responsible for internal control. Now let's look at some of the control activities. We are saying that control activities are the policies, procedures, techniques, and mechanisms that help ensure that management response to reduce risks identified during the risk assessment process is carried out. So we are saying that control activities are the policies, procedures, techniques, and mechanisms that help ensure that management's response to reduce risks identified during the risk assessment process is carried out. We will talk about risk assessment and some of the things that you can do. In other words, control activities are basically, or they are simply actions taken to minimize risk. They are basically actions taken to minimize risk. The need for a control activity is established in the risk assessment process. And when the assessment identifies a significant risk to the achievement of an agency's objective, a corresponding control activity or activities is determined and implemented. Now let's look at some of the control activity. The first one is preventive control activity. So basically we have two types of control activity. We have the preventive and also the detective. And when we talk about preventive control activities, they are normally designed to deter the occurrence of an undesirable event. And the development of these control involves predicting potential problems before they occur and also implementing procedures to avoid them. The next one is also detective activities or detective control activities. And they are also designed to identify undesirable events that do occur and alert management about what has happened. So the first one is preventive, the other one is also detective. But basically, it is always important that you spend much time with the preventive, because with respect to the detective, it has already happened and you want to find out the fault, what caused what, which in one way or the other, one will say that the harm has already been caused. So it is always advisable that you implement a lot of the preventive activities or a lot of the preventive control activities as compared to the detective activities within your organization. Now, every internal control activity should be incorporated. So whenever you want to So we are saying that every control activity should be incorporated into the organizations, should be incorporated into the organization's first one, their policies, 2, their procedures, 3, the sequences or combinations of procedures, 4, assignment of duties, responsibilities, and authorities, 5, physical arrangement or processes, and last but not the least, you can combine any of the above. So if you want to have an effective control activities, you have to make sure that your control activities has been incorporated into 1, the organization's policies, the procedures, a sequence or combinations of procedures, the assignment of duties, responsibilities, and also authorities given to the staff, the physical arrangement or processes, and last but not the least, a combination of the above. So you can combine the policies and procedures whenever you can combine policies and procedures and still incorporate your control activities into them. How should control activities be incorporated into an agency's internal control plan? And we are saying that whenever you want to design or when you are designing and implementing a control activity, when you are designing and implementing control activities, management should aim to get the maximum benefit at the lowest possible cost. And considerations should be given to the following. First, the cost of the control activity should not exceed the costs that will be incurred by the agency if the undesirable event occurred. That is, if there is going to be a control activity, the cost of designing and implementing such a control activity should not be more than what the organization will lose in case the undesirable occurrence or event occurred. And management should build control activities into business processes and systems as the process and systems are being designed. And adding control activities after the development of a process or a system is generally more costly. So if you want to add the control activity after you have come out with your or after you have finished with the development of your process or system, it will, as a company, you should bear in mind that you are going to incur a lot of cost when you do that. Now, we are also saying that the allocation of resources among control activities should be based on the likelihood and also the impact of the risk. For any given risk, there may be multiple appropriate control activities that can be put in place, either individually or in combination with other control activities. And also, excessive use of control could impede productivity. Whenever you have an excessive use of control, it can sometimes impede productivity. Let's look at some of the commonly used control activities. The first one is authorization. You can use authorization as one of the control activities. For example, control activities in this category are designed to provide reasonable assurance that all transactions are within the limits set by policy, or that exceptions to policy have been granted by the appropriate official. So just authorization, for example, if you're an organization and you have the mandate to sign, authorize something, there is no way you do that. So we normally say that authorization or giving authorization to an individual or to a body or to a department becomes a control activity. For example, you all know that in Ghana here, the only agency designed or the only agency responsible for approving food and drugs or vetting food and drugs is the FDA. So they have the authorization. Unless they give you the authorization, there is no way you can even start using a medicine or a vaccine in the country. The next one is also review and approval. It is also one of the commonly used control activities. That is, whenever there is any activity, you have to review. Whenever there is a system put in place to review and approve, it will also be used as one of the control activities. The next one is also verification. And we are saying that control activities in this category include a variety of computer and also manual controls designed to provide reasonable assurance that all account information has been correctly captured. And we are also saying that the next one is reconciliation. That is, they are designed to provide reasonable assurance of the accuracy of financial records through the periodic comparison of source documents to data recorded in accounting information system. The next one is also physical security over assets. Control activities in this category are designed to provide reasonable assurance that assets are safeguarded and protected from loss or damage due to accident, natural disaster, negligence, or intentional act of fraud, theft, or abuse. So here, a company can even insure their assets. So there is also physical security over assets. The next one is also segregation of duty, like giving too much power to one person. So when you segregate the responsibility, it can also be a way of a control activity. We also have education, training, and also coaching. When you want to keep on educating and training your staff, or they will help even in the implementation of the various control activities. So normally, education, training, and also coaching forms part of the control activities. And the last but not the least, performance planning and also evaluation. When people are aware that their actions and inactions will be evaluated, they will do the best thing, they will do the proper thing. So performance planning and also evaluation forms part of the commonly used control activities. Let's look at some of the limitations of control activities. Control activities can have limitations based on one, judgment. People's judgment, how people see things. For example, the effectiveness of control activity will be limited by the fact that decisions must be made with human judgment in the time available. When you are not in normal times, decisions may vary. We are aware that a lot of companies made a lot of decisions which were normally not based on laws because of the COVID-19. So sometimes human judgment can also affect or limit control activities. The other one is also breakdowns. Even if control activities are well designed, they can break down. Personnel may misunderstand instruction or simply make mistakes. Errors may also stem from new technology and the complexity of computerized information systems. We're also talking about management override. We have a situation where management can sometimes give direct instruction and also telling their subordinate do ABC, which sometimes goes contrary to whatever has been stipulated in the organization's policy or procedures of doing things. So we can also have a management override as one of the limitations to control activity. We also have collision. That is, there can be collision between two or more individuals. That can also result in control activity failures. We live in a situation where, or we can have a situation where two people who are working together in an organization can have issues when they are normally, they can bring their personal issues on board, which can affect their control activities. We also have cost versus benefit. Cost versus benefit. That is, as I have already indicated, if the control activity that you're going to implement, the cost involved in implementing it, or the cost involved in design and implementing it is going to be more than the cost that a company will incur in case there is an undesirable occurrence. It can also affect control activity. The next one is also resource limitation. For example, there are some control activities that are normally based on technology and resources. So if the resources are not there, how can you ensure control activity? For example, you want to put measures in place that your workers come to work on time and they leave at the appropriate time. So in this case, to do such a proper monitoring or ensure that your workers follow that, you may say that I have to bring a biometric device that will be used to record the attendance through their fingerprint. So if you don't have the resources, or when the resources are not working up to perfection, it can also affect the control activity of such organization. So for your additional reading, I want you to go and read extensively on what we mean by, or what an internal control documentation is required. That is what internal control documentation is required. The next one is you have to read about internal auditing and look out for the difference between internal and external auditing. And the last question, or the last thing that I want you to read and also do research about, is also what are the basic requirements of internal auditing. So this brings us to the end of our short video on our IT auditing course today, or our IT auditing topic today. I hope you have enjoyed the video. Keep on watching the video, like it, share it, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will upload the next video on IT auditing by the close of week today. Thank you, and see you again.